and I am 28. I will smack a big bitch. What they gonna do? I send you right to the Lord.
She was often the glue in her friend groups, the one who kept people together, who always remembered birthdays, and who knew when someone needed a call just to check in. Although Jasity had experienced the highs and lows of young adulthood, she remained grounded in her identity as a mother. Her daughter Kirsten, at just 6 years old, had already inherited her mother's bright eyes and bold personality. Her youngest, Junior, had just turned 1. To Jasity, being a mom wasn't a job. It was her joy. She kept their photos on her phone like trophies and was constantly making plans for them, from birthday parties to school shoes to saving for their future. As for her romantic life, Jasity wasn't known for being careless with her heart. She was selective, cautious, and above all, protective of her peace. Those who knew her said she wasn't looking for chaos. She was looking for stability, for someone who would match her energy without bringing harm. While she may have had people come and go, she was determined not to let any relationship come between her and her goals. In the weeks leading up to her birthday, Jasity was looking forward to celebrating herself. It was rare for her to take time off, and this year felt different. She was stepping into 28 not just as a mother, but as a woman reclaiming her joy. She made plans to enjoy the night with friends. Nothing too fancy, just music, laughter, maybe a few drinks, and a lot of love. She deserved that. She had earned that. That night, she showed up glowing. Her friend said she was in high spirits, smiling from ear to ear. She was dancing, cracking jokes, capturing selfies, and soaking in every minute of the moment. It was a night where she wasn't just mom or the helper. She was simply Jazz, and her friends were thrilled to be there with her. It was her day, and the joy she radiated lit up the lot they gathered in. They chose a spot near 57th and Prospect, an area many in the community knew as a popular after-hours location. People came to unwind after clubs closed to talk, laugh, and celebrate safely. It wasn't unusual to see birthday balloons, Bluetooth speakers, and cars parked with trunks open, music playing softly into the early morning. For many, it felt like tradition, familiar and safe. But even in these comforting spaces, tragedy can still find its way in. Jasity, unaware of what the next hour would bring, was living fully. There were no signs, no warnings. She was doing what most of us take for granted, enjoying a birthday, holding joy in her hands. In those final hours, she was surrounded by people who adored her, who celebrated her life while she was still here to enjoy it. What stands out about that night isn't just the horror that followed. It's the beauty that preceded it. Jasity showed up in her power. She laughed. She danced. She lived. It's important we remember that part of the story, too, because her life wasn't defined by how it ended, but by how she made others feel while she was here. That night, she felt free, and that's why her loss cut so deeply. Because in that moment, Jasity was doing what every person deserves to do, celebrate their existence. She was surrounded by joy, unaware that someone else's choices would steal that joy away. But before tragedy struck, Jasity Strong was thriving, loved, and beautifully alive. The morning of June 25th, 2023, began like a dream for Jasity. It was her birthday, a special day she always cherished, not just for the celebration, but for the reflection it brought. 28 years of life, love, and growth. She had made it another year, and that meant something to her. Her phone buzzed with early birthday wishes. Her mother, Tamika, made sure she was one of the first voices her daughter heard that day. As the evening approached, excitement bubbled. Jasity had plans to go out later, but first, she had a quiet moment with her kids. She snapped a few photos of them, posted something sweet on social media, and gave them hugs as she got ready. It wasn't a fancy party, just a night to laugh and feel alive. She dressed up, applied her makeup just the way she liked, and let her joy shine through. That glow, it wasn't just from the makeup. It was from being present, proud, and happy. Later that night, Jasity and her friends made their way to a familiar gathering spot near 57th and Prospect Avenue in Kansas City. It was a well-known area for late-night meetups after the clubs closed. People played music, danced, and celebrated together. It felt familiar, it felt safe, and most importantly, it felt like home. Balloons swayed, Bluetooth speakers played soft R&B and hip-hop, and people laughed into the humid summer night. As the night stretched into early morning, the celebration for Jasity's birthday carried on. The crowd grew, with dozens of people mingling in the lot. Some leaned against cars, others danced in circles. Jasity moved from group to group, greeting familiar faces, catching up with old friends. She took photos, shared drinks, and laughed so fully that others couldn't help but smile when she walked by. Then, just after 4:30 a.m., that joy was shattered. Gunfire rang out. It was sudden. Quick bursts that ripped through the music and sent bodies ducking and running for cover. Screams echoed. Chaos unfolded. Cars sped off. People dove behind walls, and in the confusion, it was unclear who had been hit. What started as a birthday celebration turned into a nightmare in a matter of seconds. When the shooting stopped, 3 people lay dead and 6 more were injured. One of those 3 was Jasity. She had been shot and killed on the very day she turned 28 years old. The same smile she had worn hours earlier was now frozen in memory. Her body remained at the scene as police and paramedics rushed in. Her family hadn't even been notified yet. Her children were still asleep at home. Back at her mother's house, Tamika had no idea her daughter was gone. The night before, they'd shared a toast over FaceTime, laughing, telling each other, "I love you." It was a tradition. That final video call now lives in Tamika's phone, a priceless record of her daughter's last moments of joy. But that morning, when Tamika saw a news alert about a shooting on Prospect, something in her heart dropped. She called Jasity's phone. No answer. The moment Tamika learned her daughter had been killed was every parent's nightmare. The world seemed to stop. Her heart shattered. She collapsed in disbelief. How could Jasity, her bright, beautiful girl, be gone? On her birthday? It felt cruel beyond words. It wasn't just the loss of a daughter. It was the loss of a future, of laughter, of warmth, of everything Jasity still had to give. What should have been a night of joy became one of Kansas City's most heartbreaking tragedies. And while the sirens eventually faded and the scene was cleared, what was left behind could never be swept away. The aching silence in a home that used to echo with laughter and the gaping hole in the lives of those who loved her most. The fateful day didn't just take Jasity's life. It stole a mother from her children, a daughter from her family, and a light from the community. In the hours following the shooting, the scene at 57th and Prospect Avenue was flooded with flashing lights and urgent voices. First responders moved quickly, tending to the wounded, identifying the deceased, and trying to piece together what had just occurred. It was chaos. So many victims, so many unanswered questions. The area, usually lively on weekends, was now sealed off with crime scene tape and scattered with evidence markers. This wasn't just another violent night in the city. This was something bigger. Detectives from the Kansas City Police Department immediately launched an investigation. Witnesses were questioned on-site. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses was collected, and officers canvassed the neighborhood. They knew time was critical. If the shooter had fled, every passing hour could make tracking them down harder. But thankfully, some of the answers came quickly. Not long after the shooting, a man arrived at a nearby hospital with a gunshot wound. That man was later identified as Kayvon Green, a 26-year-old who had reportedly been present at the scene during the shooting. Detectives found his injury suspicious, and his name had already come up in early witness statements. As they dug deeper, pieces started to fall into place. After being treated, Kayvon Green was taken into custody. Over the next several days, investigators worked to build a case. Forensic evidence, shell casings, witness statements, and Green's own movements that night all pointed toward a chilling conclusion. He had been the one to open fire that early morning, turning a birthday gathering into a massacre. Authorities believe the shooting was not random, though the full motive has still not been made publicly clear. Green was eventually charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder, including the killing of Jasity Strong, along with 6 counts of armed criminal action and unlawful use of a weapon. The news offered a small sense of relief to the families of the victims. While it didn't bring back their loved ones, it meant someone was being held accountable. It meant justice had a chance to begin. For Jasity's family, the arrest brought a wave of emotion. part sorrow, part numbness, and part gratitude that at least a man accused of ending her life would face the legal system. Her mother, Tamika, was vocal in interviews, calling for justice not just for Jasity, but for the other families affected by the shooting. "We want accountability. We want change. And we want people to know that she mattered," she said. The arrest made headlines throughout Missouri. But behind the headlines was a deep, aching silence in the homes of the families affected. Kayvon Green's name would now be etched into their stories, but only as a shadow, never the main character, because Jasity and the others who died that night were the real stories, lives filled with promise, laughter, and love. Investigators continued to gather evidence, even after Green's arrest. The incident had left behind a complicated puzzle, one that required not just legal work, but emotional reckoning. Community leaders also stepped forward, calling for safer nightlife areas and stronger de-escalation efforts. Some even organized meetings between city officials and families of the victims to talk about what could be done to prevent tragedies like this. As the case moved through the legal system, the Strong family tried to keep Jasity's memory alive in everything they did, from candlelight vigils to T-shirts printed with her smiling face. For them, every hearing, every update was a reminder of what they had lost. They didn't want her name to fade into just another statistic. She was more than that. She was their everything. In many ways, the arrest marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, one filled with court dates, statements, and slow-moving justice. But for now, the person believed responsible for the shooting was off the streets. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't undo what was done. But it was a start. After the devastating events of June 25th, the wheels of justice began to turn, slowly, carefully, and under the heavy weight of grief. The man arrested in connection to the shooting, Kayvon Green, now faced a long road to the legal system, charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder, including the killing of Jasity, alongside 6 counts of armed criminal action and unlawful use of a weapon. His case quickly became a focal point not just for families, but for the Kansas City community at large. In the courtroom, the emotions were raw. Jasity's family sat quietly during Green's initial appearances. Tamika Jenkins, her mother, clutching a photo of her daughter while trying to stay composed. Each hearing felt like ripping open a wound, but they showed up again and again, because for them, this wasn't just about punishment. It was about remembering Jasity's life and standing up for it in the only place left that offered some form of justice. The prosecution laid out the growing body of evidence: surveillance footage, witness testimonies, ballistic reports, and statements from those who had been injured that night. Prosecutors painted a picture of a volatile situation, of a night that should have ended in hugs and goodbyes, but instead ended in chaos and gunfire. Green, according to authorities, had pulled the trigger without regard for who might be in the crossfire. Green's defense team, as expected, entered a plea of not guilty. Legal delays followed, common in cases of this magnitude, but painful for families waiting for closure. There were postponements, filings, and motions. For those grieving Jasity, it sometimes felt like the system was dragging, while their pain remained fresh and immediate. Still, they remained patient, hoping that truth and accountability would eventually win out. Throughout the process, local advocacy groups and violence prevention organizations stood with the victims' families. They held candlelight vigils outside the courthouse, spoke at press conferences, and urged the city to not let Jasity's story fade. Her name became a symbol, not just a loss, but the urgent need for change. She wasn't forgotten in the halls of justice. While no trial date had been finalized at the time of the most recent updates, the prosecution remained confident. They promised to pursue the fullest extent of the law. They knew the case held the hearts of 3 families, especially that of Jasity, who had only moments earlier been celebrating her life when it was taken from her. They vowed to do her memory justice. For her family, each court appearance, each legal filing, is a step forward in a journey they never asked to take. But they moved through it with dignity, grace, and an unshakable resolve to honor Jasity's life. The legal proceedings will one day come to a conclusion, but their love for her and their commitment to telling her story will never end. The loss of Jasity Strong didn't just affect her family. It sent shockwaves through the entire Kansas City community. For those who knew her personally, the grief was overwhelming. But even those who had never met her felt a deep, aching sadness. Her story was one that could have belonged to any sister, daughter, mother, or friend. She was loved, and her presence touched lives far beyond her immediate circle. At the heart of the pain was her mother, Tamika Jenkins, whose heartbreak became the voice of so many grieving parents. Tamika often spoke to reporters with tears in her eyes, but strength in her voice, telling the world that her daughter was not a random victim, but a beautiful soul with dreams and a purpose. She shared photos, videos, and memories of Jasity that reminded the public this was more than a crime. It was a human life stolen far too soon. Then there were Jasity's children, who were left to grow up without their mother's laughter, guidance, or love. Her 6-year-old daughter, Kirsten, was old enough to feel the void, and her 1-year-old son, Junior, would now only know his mother through stories and pictures. The community wrapped itself around the children, raising funds, offering support, and pledging to help carry on the love that Jasity had poured into them every single day. Friends and co-workers organized candlelight vigils in her honor. At one gathering, balloons were released into the sky as those in attendance held hands and shared memories. Her favorite songs played in the background. People cried, but they also laughed, remembering the way Jasity used to crack jokes, her fierce loyalty, her warm hugs. Her spirit was so alive in those moments. It felt like she was there. Local organizations fighting gun violence took up Jasity's name as a rallying cry. Community leaders stood on street corners and in city council meetings, demanding stronger protections for young women like her. She became a symbol, not just a tragedy, but of the urgent need for safer spaces, conflict resolution, and accessible mental health support in under-resourced neighborhoods. Social media was flooded with tributes. Friends shared old selfies with heartfelt captions. Former classmates wrote about her smile, her ambition, and how she made people feel seen. The hashtag Justice for Jasity spread quickly. People who had never even met her said they felt connected to her story, and angry that her life was cut short just as she was stepping into her power. What Jasity left behind wasn't just memories. It was a movement of love, reflection, and resilience. Her life continues to echo in the halls of her former workplaces, in the laughter of her children, and in the hearts of a city that refuses to forget her. She mattered. She still matters. And her light continues to shine, even in the shadows of grief. The tragic loss of Jasity Strong shines a painful light on a broader crisis that continues to plague communities across America: gun violence. Her death wasn't an isolated incident, but rather one of many that unfold all too often in neighborhoods like Kansas City's Prospect Corridor, where joy and violence sometimes share the same space. It raises a question that so many families are forced to ask. How did we get here, and how do we stop this from happening again? Kansas City, like many urban centers, has been struggling with rising rates of shootings, particularly in areas underserved by community investment and public safety initiatives. What's heartbreaking is that so many of these incidents happen not in moments of crime or gang activity, but in places where people simply gather to celebrate life. A birthday party, a cookout, a block gathering. Jasity's death makes the truth impossible to ignore. Even joy isn't safe anymore. Gun violence has long-lasting ripple effects. It doesn't just end lives, it disrupts generations. Children grow up without parents. Parents bury their babies. Communities grieve in cycles. And yet, for so many neighborhoods, there's a heartbreaking sense of resignation, like it's just part of life now. But Jasity's story calls us to reject that notion. It doesn't have to be this way. One of the major conversations sparked by her death revolves around a lack of safe, monitored spaces for young people to gather. In many cities, when clubs close, young adults don't always have places to decompress safely. Late-night parking lot meetups have become the norm, and while many are peaceful, they're vulnerable to sudden, unpredictable violence. Community leaders are now discussing how to create safe, structured alternatives that still honor the freedom young adults need to celebrate life. Another piece of the conversation focuses on conflict resolution and gun access. Time and time again, disputes escalate to gunfire because people are armed and reactive. In many cases, the shooter isn't a hardened criminal. It's someone who acted impulsively, with a weapon too easily within reach. Advocates for gun safety stress the importance of background checks, gun storage education, and local buyback programs aimed at reducing weapons on the streets. The trauma of these events also raises the issue of mental health and community healing. Families and neighborhoods hit by tragedy often receive little follow-up care. Grief counselors come and go, but the pain lingers. What if, alongside justice, we also made room for healing spaces? Counseling centers, peer-led support groups, and grief resources need to be a permanent part of communities touched by violence, not just temporary band-aids. Young Black women like Jasity are often underrepresented in conversations about gun violence, yet they're increasingly its victims. When we talk about prevention and justice, we must also talk about protecting women, especially mothers, caregivers, and peacemakers like Jasity, who are pillars of their homes and communities. Their safety is community safety. Jasity's death has also reignited calls for intervention programs that identify brewing conflicts before they erupt. Some cities have seen success with community-based teams that de-escalate disputes, mentor at-risk youth, and rebuild trust between residents and local authorities. Perhaps if those programs had been in place here, the outcome would have been different. In her short 28 years, Jasity represented everything that is good and possible in a community. Hard-working, nurturing, driven. If her death inspires policies that protect other young women, if it sparks conversations that lead to change, then her story becomes more than a tragedy. It becomes a call to care more, invest more, and act sooner. Ultimately, the responsibility falls on all of us, neighbors, city officials, educators, faith leaders, and citizens. Jasity's memory deserves more than just mourning. It deserves momentum. And through that momentum, we can begin to build a future where no family has to lose their daughter at a birthday party, and no child has to grow up without a mother's love. As of now, the case against Kayvon Green continues to move slowly through the legal system. He remains in custody, charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder, including the senseless killing of Jasity. While no official trial date has been set, prosecutors are committed to seeking full accountability for the lives taken and the futures shattered. Jasity's family attends court dates with heavy hearts but unwavering determination, ensuring her name is not forgotten in the halls of justice. Her children are being cared for by family members who are doing everything they can to keep her memory alive. Little Kirsten still asks about her mom, and baby Junior continues to grow in a world where she no longer physically exists, but her love still surrounds him. The community has rallied around them, raising funds, offering emotional support, and honoring the bond they shared with their mother. The strong family strength in the face of such devastation is nothing short of inspiring. Yet, even as the legal process unfolds, Jasity's story has become more than a case number or a name in the news. It's become a mirror, a reflection of how vulnerable our most vibrant lives can be. Her light, taken so suddenly, now shines as a reminder to protect and value the people around us, to speak up against violence, and to advocate for real change in our neighborhoods. This is where you, the viewer, come in. We can't undo what happened to Jasity, but we can honor her by helping others. Whether it's checking in on a young mother, supporting local violence prevention efforts, or simply sharing her story. Every action matters. You never know when a small act of kindness or vigilance could save a life. If you live in an area affected by gun violence, look for local programs you can support, mentorship organizations, youth centers, crisis response teams. Speak to your local officials about safety reforms, especially around community gatherings. Advocate for safe spaces where joy doesn't have to come at the cost of fear. Most importantly, keep saying her name. Jasity Strong wasn't just a victim. She was a daughter, a friend, a caregiver, a mother. Her dreams were real. Her love was deep. And her life, though tragically cut short, has the power to ignite change in ways she never imagined. Let her story stir you, not just to feel, but to act. Because we owe it to Jasity, and to every life lost too soon, to turn grief into purpose. That's how we keep her spirit alive. That's how we create a future she would have been proud of. As we come to the close of Jasity's story, we're left with a mix of emotions, grief, love, anger, and reflection. It's never easy to tell stories like these, but it's necessary, because behind every headline is a heartbeat. Behind every tragic loss is a name, a family, a purpose. And Jasity Strong was all of that and more. Her life deserves to be remembered, not just for how it ended, but for how it was lived. She was a daughter who brought joy to her mother, a friend who showed up with laughter, a mother who gave her children every ounce of her love, and a woman whose strength radiated through everything she did. Her birthday was meant to be a celebration of life, and we hope this video, in its own way, becomes just that, a celebration of who she was. If Jasity's story touched your heart, we ask that you help carry it forward. Share this video with someone, post her name, talk about the impact of gun violence, and most importantly, remember her. These small actions help ensure that Jasity isn't just another story lost in the noise, but one that stays alive through our voices, through our care. We also encourage you to like this video if it resonated with you. Your support helps us continue telling these powerful, human stories that deserve more than just a fleeting mention. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to lled True Crime Stories. Here, we're building a space that honors victims, lifts up voices, and explores the human side of true crime with empathy and respect. Each subscription allows us to shine light on another name, another family, another fight for justice. When you click that notification bell, you become part of this mission to turn tragedy into awareness and honor those we've lost by making sure they're never forgotten. To Jasity's family and loved ones, we hold you in our hearts. To her children, may you always know how deeply your mother was loved. And to everyone watching, may this story move you, not just to emotion, but to care, for your community, your neighbors, and for those whose voices are no longer here to speak for themselves. Thank you for walking through this story with us. We hope it stays with you. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other.